My mom got pregnant at 45, kind of late in the game. The baby came back with a super male gene. I told her flat out to let go of the kid. My dad slapped me furious. How can you be so cruel? He's your brother. Mom, Dad, you can't keep this baby. He's going to be a big problem. I stood firm, holding the super male gene report. I knew they wanted a son. I'm their only daughter. When Mom had me, there were complications, and she almost didn't make it. She was told she couldn't have more kids. But here we are, years later, and Mom is pregnant at 45. I don't care about sharing an inheritance. This kid has genetic issues. My dad wouldn't hear it. He slapped me hard. How can you be so cruel? He's your brother. I held my stinging cheek and looked at him, confused and hurt. Cruel? I'm being kind. You don't understand how scary supermale syndrome is. These guys often end up troubled, even criminals. If you want to drag yourself down, fine. But don't bring innocent people into it. I yelled, losing it. My dad shook with rage and slapped me again. Ungrateful daughter. Get out now. Haven't been back home in 7 months. No call from them, none from me. Then my aunt calls with good news. Molly, come home. You have a brother. The noise in the background was deafening. I couldn't help but feel cynical. This brother wasn't going to be anything good. When he grows up, and all that genetic stuff kicks in, let's see if they're still smiling. Too busy. Working late. I shot down the invite fast. Didn't want to see the kid at all. Then Mom called. Her voice was weak. Molly, I know you're upset about your dad hitting you, but he feels bad too. Come see your brother. He's really cute and good. Not like you said. She tried to play the family card. Even if he is, we'd love him into being better. Love him better? Yeah, right, dream on. When I got home, the place was packed with aunts. Mom was resting, beaming at baby Mike, surrounded by doting relatives. Molly, you're back. My aunt shouted, and all eyes turned to me. I came for some papers, not for him. Planning on moving out for good. Couldn't stand the chaos. Eyes cold, I said, just here for the paperwork, not to see him. I glanced at Mike, a mix of dad and mom. He looked sweet asleep. Why are you being this way? My dad rushed in, arms full of baby formula. I get you're mad, but come on, he's so well behaved. How could he have that syndrome? Behaved? More like exhausting. They all had dark circles. Bet they hadn't slept without holding him for a month. Oh, they called me now that they needed help babysitting. The noisy room got silent quick. You needed to be held as a baby too. You're just jealous about the inheritance. That's why you're pushing him away. Dad kept denying what I said. Mom stayed silent. She usually relied on Dad to fight for her. If Dad couldn't, she'd shove the trouble onto others. They were always right in their eyes, even when they weren't. Fine, I'll stay. Want to see how their angel puts them through the ringer without family help. That night, Mom's voice echoed through the complex, shattered with frustration. Stop crying, or I'll choke you. Her boundless motherly love? Gone. Mike was wiping everyone out with his tears, crying for hours. Bet the neighbors would complain soon. It was nearly bedtime for everyone. Me. I had headphones in, sprawled out, watching food streams. Relaxed bliss, broken only by Dad knocking on my door. What's up? I lazily sat up, facing my super annoyed dad. Your precious boy's loud. Can you calm him down? Dad didn't expect that. He turned red with anger, trying to keep it cool. Look after your brother. We need rest. Clear as day, it's all about their own ease. I sneered, not my kid. You deal with him. Told you not to have him. And now you don't want to deal. Either toss him or suck it up. Don't look to me. Dad's face darkened, ready to burst. How did we raise such an ungrateful daughter? If we rely on you in old age, we'll starve. I squinted, heart frozen. I'll make sure you're not starving. But your precious son might be the end of you first. Graduated college, been working 3 years. Always sent half of my paycheck back home. Big birthday gifts, lots of calls asking how they are. Thankful for their care. And they ignored every bit of my gratitude. People kept calling me ungrateful left and right. My mom suddenly showed up holding Mike at her bedroom door, eavesdropping on my dad and me. She snapped, enough with your talk of life and death. You're holding on to this kid tonight. She hurriedly brought Mike over, squatted down to place him at my door, then yanked my dad back to their room, slamming the door shut. It's funny, did they think I'd care? What a joke. So they shut the door, big deal. Anyone can do that. I shut my door and locked it. Ordered some seafood on Mate 1 to celebrate. Round 1. And I already felt a bit of satisfaction. Let's see if they regret bringing Mike into the world now. Mike's wild cries got the neighbors upstairs and downstairs annoyed. They came knocking loudly on my door. Honestly, they're too kind. If I were them, I'd have kicked in 2 holes in the door. I was ear to door, listening to my dad curse at me under his breath while taking Mike away. I sneaked a peek to see him apologizing to the neighbors. Your kid's too noisy. We have work tomorrow. Can you please keep your kid in check? The neighbors upstairs and downstairs were polite, not yelling in his face. If it's so easy, why don't you take him and watch him? My dad's temper flared up. The kid's so small, can't you understand that? Kids cry. His questions irritated the neighbors even more. Before they could snap back, my mom, hair a mess and looking rough, ran out. She grabbed Mike from my dad and shoved him at one neighbor. You take him. We don't want him. That shocked the upstairs and downstairs folks. What kind of grandparents are you? The downstairs neighbor, now holding a suddenly quiet Mike, tried to keep calm. Get your son and daughter-in-law to take care of him. Man, who could blame them? My parents' faces went beet red. Guys, their son? He's right there in your arms, I said, grinning smugly. Their son. The neighbor gave me and my parents a once-over, then looked at Mike. If you have kids, you need to care for them. Don't just have them and neglect them. The downstairs neighbor's sudden burst of anger stunned them into silence. When the neighbor handed a now sleeping Mike back to my dad, my seafood delivery arrived outside. Hey, which one of you ordered the seafood? The delivery guy's voice was loud enough to wake Mike up again. What's your problem? My mom freaked, almost lunging at the delivery guy, who was nearly in tears. Can't you see there's a baby here? Why are you shouting? Luckily, the neighbors held my mom back, and I quickly stood between her and the delivery guy. Call the cops, I'll call the cops. My mom shouted like a madwoman. When the cops arrived and got the story, even they felt sorry for the delivery guy. But my parents wouldn't let it go. He either pays tonight or babysits, or I won't let this slide. We're the police, we'll handle it, the cops said, frowning at my mom. Also, what you said earlier is a threat toward the delivery guy. You should calm down and not make a big issue out of nothing. Exactly. If you harass the delivery guy, we'll seek compensation for emotional distress, said the upstairs neighbor, nodding in agreement with the downstairs neighbor. And me? I just ate my seafood, watching how they'd resolve this mess. You ungrateful brat, my mom said, people are bullying us at our doorstep, and all you do is eat. Heartless. She didn't want to pay the neighbors, but still wanted the delivery guy to suffer. Frustrated, she took it out on me, pinching my arm hard. I gasped at the pain. The 2 cops quickly stopped her from hurting me. Ma'am, you can't go around doing that. She's our daughter. We can do whatever we want. Can you do anything about it? My dad, holding Mike, stood in front of my mom and shoved the cops. If you depress my wife, I won't let it go. When the police were about to arrest my dad for assaulting them, Mike's cry interrupted the moment. The 2 cops exchanged a glance, realizing how tricky this situation was. They focused on resolving the delivery guy issue and patiently advised my parents to keep Mike quiet at night. My parents kind of cooperated, so the police left, taking the neighbors and delivery guy with them. Our son's amazing, protecting his dad at such a young age. My dad showered Mike with kisses, unlike some who are heartless, ignoring the fact that the cops were about to arrest their dad. I rolled my eyes and laughed, testing the law and thinking I'd be as brainless? Ridiculous. My comeback didn't sit well with my mom. She came at me again. This time, she grabbed a broom to hit me. But I'm no fool. I dodged into my room with the seafood, locked myself in, put on earplugs and enjoyed my meal. But the dipping sauce was a bit salty, so I'd give it a 9.5. Ever since then, Mike became famous around the whole neighborhood. For 3 years, any little thing upset him, and he'd throw a tantrum. Whenever it got serious, he'd bite my mom's face furiously. When Mike didn't have teeth, my mom said he was kissing her, understanding her hard work and expressing gratitude with a kiss. I found my mom's words utterly laughable. With that fierce look on Mike's face, grateful, Looked more like he wanted to eat you. Then Mike grew teeth, and my mom's face was consistently bruised. What about my dad? He's even worse. Once Mike learned to walk, he'd always find a way to get his hands on dangerous stuff, like the small fruit knife, nail clippers, toothpicks, and other sharp objects from the drawer. He'd wait until my dad wasn't paying attention or was resting, and then he'd deliberately start poking him with them. The worst incident was when Mike was 2. My dad was taking a nap on the couch. Mike found a screwdriver in the drawer, wobbly climbed onto the couch, and nearly stabbed my dad in the eye. Luckily, the movement of the couch woke my dad up just in time to jerk his head to the right, saving his left eyeball. But the sharp screwdriver still injured the area around his eye socket. He needed a few stitches, and now there's a scar. As for me, Mike barely even saw me. I was at work when he was awake, and I got back home when he was asleep. Our relationship was a weird mix of being strangers and yet familiar. Help! Someone's killing someone. I heard someone shouting in the neighborhood kids' play area. I had just gotten off work, and being a concerned citizen, I had to check it out. Plus, I had a hunch Mike might be involved, given the past incidents. Turns out I was right. Your grandson flung a handful of sand into my granddaughter's eyes, and even pushed her head into the sandpit. Are you trying to harm her? A distressed grandma said, holding a 1.5-year-old girl who was wailing and rubbing her eyes non-stop. She mistook Mike for my dad's grandson, and my dad's face turned beet red. Kids play rough, it's normal. How does that make him a killer? My dad was cradling Mike, scared he might be frightened. Watch your words. If you scare my son, I'll scare your granddaughter just the same. The grandma was taken aback and had no idea Mike was his son, not grandson. Whether he's your kid or grandson, I don't care. The grandma was too worried about her granddaughter to argue further. I'm gonna call the cops, she threatened as she hurriedly left with the crying child to get her eyes checked at the hospital. My dad looked exhausted. No wonder the grandma thought Mike was his grandson. My dad had Mike when he was 50 and has been worn out from dealing with him for 3 years now. At 53, he looks 65. As he eyed the smug grin on Mike's face, he frowned. Maybe, just maybe, he started to see my point. That his son could be naturally mean? Upon getting home, my mom heard that Mike was in trouble again. Yet she just kept that gentle smile on her face. Our Mike is just a little man. Boys are supposed to be mischievous, so what's the big deal? She didn't scold Mike at all. She coddled him instead, cooing softly, my little darling, don't be afraid. With mommy and daddy here, no one's gonna bully you. I've seriously had enough. With my mom always protecting Mike, this behavior will only get worse. Mom, if you don't straighten him out now, someday he'll cross the wrong person, and then you'll end up crying with no one to blame. I noticed my dad sitting silently on the couch, seemingly deep in thought. I hoped he was reconsidering. Sadly, it's too late. And what if he really harms someone in the future? You gonna keep defending him then? I was saying all this out of concern. Whatever the case, they're my parents, and they're not getting any younger. Shut up. My mom glared at me like I was the enemy. My son's good. He's just a bit naughty. You think you weren't when you were little? She started to lash out with words and kicks. You've lived all these years. Ever run into any real troublemakers? I didn't dodge in time, and her high heel jabbed my thigh hard, causing pain to shoot through me, reaching my heart. That's enough, no more fighting. My dad stood up from the couch, his emotion barely contained. Next month, we're sending him to kindergarten. Let the teachers discipline him. I bit my lip. For the safety of others, I spoke up even if it meant getting smacked. He's so unruly. If you send him to a kindergarten, he'll just make trouble for the other kids. I suggest you teach him at home yourselves. You're insane. For the first time in 3 years, my dad raised a hand and slapped me hard across the face. I've put up with you for 3 years. He shouted. Every time you talk about Mike, it's always bad stuff. Maybe he's so naughty because you cursed him. The slap was powerful. It left stars twinkling in my vision, my ears buzzing, and I staggered back a few steps. I was in disbelief as I looked at my dad striking me again. His recent silence wasn't about reflecting on the decision to have Mike. Instead, he was holding back his urge to hit me. Good. She deserved it. My mom spurred things on, clutching Mike. Mike, she's a bad sister. Stay away from her. Even if she gets married and her in-laws mistreat her, it's her own fault for being so vile. Looking at my hopeless parents, a chill settled deep within me that I'd never felt before. Bad sister, kill her. Mike mimed stabbing motions, and his smile was genuinely chilling. There was no joking about it. Even though he was young, he truly understood malevolence. When the grandma came back with the police, they noticed my face and frowned. You've got a handprint on your face, and you're bleeding at the corner of your mouth. Did someone hit you? Seeing their concern made me feel emotional, and tears welled up. Officer, my situation can wait. Deal with the report first, I said. Some things have to be handled one thing at a time. My dad glared at me secretly, silently telling me not to cause trouble. I found it laughable. He never gave me the chance to create trouble, so how could I? Officer, please help my granddaughter get justice, the grandma pleaded, holding the little girl with red eyes. Angrily, she pointed at Mike in my dad's arms. This kid is a menace. He shoved my granddaughter's head into the sand and got sand in her eyes. You have evidence. My mom narrowed her eyes, plotting something, and then started to play hardball. No evidence, and we'll sue you for defamation. She crossed her arms, striking an arrogant pose. That's right. I'm gonna sue you for defamation. My dad snorted and told the two cops, officers, they're obviously trying to extort me without any evidence. I want to file a report too. You should arrest this old lady. There's no point in arguing. We already checked the surveillance footage. It clearly shows this little boy you're holding first throwing sand at the girl's eyes, then shoving her head into the sand and holding it there. No way. My parents said in unison, their voices full of doubt. The property manager said the cameras were broken and would take 3 days to fix. How could you have seen anything? You must have taken a bribe from this old lady to scam us. Here's the footage, one of the officers said. They were regulars at our house, always dealing with Mike's antics. Seeing the footage, my mom frowned and glanced at my dad. Officers, they're just kids playing around. This doesn't prove anything, right? My dad dismissed the evidence. Old lady, you're really overreacting, always calling the police. Who'd let their grandkid play with yours after this? The old lady was furious. If the cops weren't holding her back, she'd have slapped my dad. How about I play with your son like he did with my granddaughter? You dare touch my son? My mom was livid. If anything happens to my son, it'll be on you. Dad, they're so annoying. Just pay them off already, Mike yawned. Every time he screwed up, my family would just throw money at the problem. Oh, my sweet boy is tired. My dad soothed him. Let your mom take you in for a nap. With Mike gone, my dad pulled out his wallet, bursting with cash. All right, how much do you want? My dad sneered at the old lady, waiting for her demand. The cops could only mediate. They couldn't arrest adults over kids' fights. But they didn't like my dad's arrogant attitude. Mr. Felix, mind your tone. Their authoritative voice forced my dad to dial it down a notch. The old lady wanted $30,000, including damages for emotional distress. If we're missing even a dime, I'll see you in court. Have you never seen money before? My dad's face turned red with anger. The old lady, tired of their antics, resorted to threats. Don't pay, and I'll throw dirt at your door every day. I'll douse you in it when you step out. My dad, usually fearless, finally faltered. He fetched $30,000 from the safe and handed it to the old lady. After that, the officers turned to me. What about your face? He hit me. I want to file a report and demand $50,000. If he refuses, arrest him. I pointed to my dad, whose face was a deep purple with rage. Kids' fights couldn't land adults in trouble, but adults hitting minors certainly could. You ungrateful brat, my dad spluttered. When did I ever hit you? My mom rushed out. We raised you, and this is how you repay us. You're not worth more than a dog. Her fists pounded down on me, but the cops quickly pulled her off and shielded me, beating someone right in front of the cops. You're out of line. Ignoring their excuses, I pulled out my phone, showing the footage. Officers, here's the evidence. That camera had been installed to catch me harassing Mike. Ironically, it caught them red-handed instead. What do you have to say now? The cops' voices were icy. My mom glared at me. You want money? Dream on. If you let the police take your dad, aren't you afraid of divine punishment? She barked, threatening to call my aunts and uncles. Unbothered, I addressed the cops. Looks like they don't want to settle. Go ahead and arrest him. You sure you don't want to settle? The officers asked one last time. We'll settle, muttered my dad before my mom could even make a call. As a deputy manager, he couldn't risk going to the police station. It would damage his reputation at work. Have you lost it? Giving her $50,000? My mom was furious, clinging to my dad's arm. I understood well that since they had their son, I barely had a place in their hearts. They planned to use me as a safety net for my brother. Let them keep dreaming. We've enrolled Mike in your kindergarten. Make sure he's taken care of and not bullied. I heard this as I got off work. In fact, I own the kindergarten. I'm the principal. Only a few close friends and the teachers know. My parents have no clue. If they did, they'd bleed me dry. Your son isn't my responsibility. I calmly texted the vice principal to refund Mike's fees and unenroll him. Your son should be praying for not being a bully. The thought of someone bullying him is laughable. The vice principal replied with a question mark, and I texted back simply, Mike is my brother. The assistant principal is my best friend. I almost talked to her every day about Mike's various evil deeds, so she instantly got why I wanted her to refund the money. You brat. My dad was enraged by my words again. He raised his hand, ready to slap me. Go ahead, hit me. I didn't dodge. Instead, I leaned my face forward. This time, I'm not settling in private. My dad's face went pale with anger. His raised hand unwillingly dropped as he cursed. Unfilial daughter, unfilial daughter. I ignored him, watching his furious face with a calm and mocking smile. Can you come up with new words? My ears are getting calluses. Just as my dad and I were in a heated argument, my mom burst out of the room. You brat, explain to me why Mike was refunded. Did you cause this? My dad stopped arguing and quickly took my mom's phone to check the message. Molly, I didn't expect you to be so vicious as to stop your own brother from going to school. My dad lost control, filled with rage like I had never seen before. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. He was full of fury when he rushed into the kitchen. When he came out, he was holding a watermelon knife, aiming to stab me. Hate filled his eyes, like he wanted to chop me into pieces. I couldn't believe his hatred for me was so intense that he would lose his mind and challenge the law. And my mom, she turned a blind eye to her husband's actions, not stopping him. Instead, she supported him. Get rid of her, that heartless creature. My heart turned cold in an instant. At the split second, I dodged my dad's watermelon knife. There was a loud thud as my dad hit the ground hard, the knife clanking as it dropped. My dad struggled to get up, face full of anger, and rushed at me again. My mom ignored our fight and went to the bathroom. That decision indirectly helped me get revenge. Revenge for my dad trying to kill me. And the one who saved me was Mike. My dad had his hands around my neck, not letting go. I'm gonna be a superhero, beat the bad guys, beat the bad guys. The watermelon knife slipped behind him. Mike was peeking from the doorway. He saw it. With a creepy smile, he picked up the knife and ran forward excitedly. He ran fast but tripped and fell forward. I saw he did it on purpose. My dad screamed in pain, his hands choking me loosened. In disbelief, he turned to look at his dear son, pure shock on his face. When he tried to speak, Mike pulled the knife fiercely, but he wasn't strong enough, making it extra painful for my dad, who couldn't even cry out. Finally, I could breathe the fresh air again, but I felt no gratitude toward Mike. I knew his next target would be me. He had waited by the door for us both to be defenseless, planning to gain from our downfall. When Mike finally yanked the knife out from my dad's back, he had already fainted from the pain. I was chilled to the bone, weak from lack of air, and could barely get up. I could only grip the watermelon knife and desperately call my mom for help. Help! Help! My mom slowly opened the door, nonchalantly chirping, Honey, that's enough. Don't really kill her. What if you end up in prison? That'd ruin Mike's future. I won't die. If you move any slower, your husband definitely will. I truly gave up on them, not killing me because it might ruin Mike's future. Shut your mouth. Even if you die, my husband won't. Her light and certain words turned to panic when she saw Mr. Felix lying in a pool of blood. Help! When her eyes fell on me, my agonized expression, bleeding hands, and Mike with a knife. She totally lost it. My dad was severely injured and stayed in surgery for 2 or 3 hours before his life was temporarily saved. Tonight would be critical if he wanted to survive. My mom was in a daze, sitting outside the ICU, not daring to leave. Mike was whining and crying in her arms. I want to go home and sleep. I want to go home and sleep. With bandaged hands, I watched as 2 policemen tried to calm Mike down to find out why he attacked his dad and me. Little boy, answer the officer's question. Why did you stab your dad and try to hurt your sister? The officer kept his voice gentle, though he wanted to smack the kid himself. In his years on the job, he'd never seen such a vicious toddler. Only 3 years old and this cruel. I just wanted them to hurt. I thought their pain was fun and their screams excited me. Mike had a smile not of childhood innocence, but of a murderous thrill. His words sent chills down all 4 of our spines. Why are you making my son lie? My mom snapped back to reality, quick to defend Mike. He's just a kid. No way he likes killing. He's kinder than all of you. I chuckled without a trace of humor on my face. Don't you feel guilty saying that? Your husband's lying in there, life uncertain. Yet you keep defending the little killer. Aren't you afraid you might be the next one in there? My anger was met with my mom's harshness. Even if you die, I won't. Our family is a mess because of your cursed mouth. She was so busy yelling at me. She missed the fleeting cruel smile on Mike's face. I knew deep down that her so-called kind son would eventually turn on her. Out of the last bit of mother-daughter affection, I decided to warn her. I suggest you sleep with one eye open. Otherwise, you might be the next one lying in a hospital bed. Mike's just a kid, and there's no way I could make him own up to his actions. But I demanded compensation from his parents, my own mom and dad. I wanted 200 grand, half for my injured hand, and the other half as a fee for not suing my dad for attempting to harm me. If they dared not to pay, I'd sue them. I felt no family ties with them anymore. Starting today, I'm cutting all ties with them. When I came to, it had been over 2 weeks, and my dad lost his job because of it. Now he's unemployed. And my mom? She stays home pampering Mike, not earning a dime. They rely on my dad's salary, and a little over 100 grand in savings. My dad's hospital bill ate up over 20 grand. And now they're compensating me another 20 grand. They're left with about 50 to 60 grand. What's funny? I looked at them with a sneer. Did you think I valued this blood relation? If you don't, then sign the disownment papers. My mom whipped out a document titled Disownment Agreement. All our property has nothing to do with you. We neither need your care nor your support. I took a deep breath, grabbed a pen, and signed quickly and decisively. Remember what you said. Don't come asking for my help, because I'll just watch you suffer. I tossed the pen aside, grabbed my jewelry box from my room, and didn't bother with the clothes in the closet. They weren't worth taking. Let them rot or hang there to disgust them. If we beg you, we're nothing but dogs. My mom's eyes were filled with disdain. We've got our son. No need for an outsider like you. I rolled my eyes and couldn't be bothered with their nonsense, turned to leave. Just then Mike, standing at the stairway, yelled excitedly, Dad. Mom, come quick, I found something good. As I reached the front door, they shoved past me. Move away, don't block the way. Didn't you hear our son calling? Caught off guard, I bumped into the wall, my shoulder aching. I watched them rush to the stairs, puzzled, asking Son, where's the good thing you mentioned? We don't see it. By then, Mike had already moved behind them, wearing a sinister smile. He suddenly pushed them down the stairs, laughing maniacally. Oh, just found 2 big fools, haha. Their cries of pain mixed with Mike's laughter oddly satisfied me. The elevator doors opened with a ding, and Mike stepped inside without looking back. I sure wasn't going to share that elevator ride. Gotta preserve my life after all. Besides, I was in such a good mood. Taking the stairs felt like some healthy exercise. Looking at the 2 sprawled figures, I nudged them with my foot and mocked. Could you die a little farther away? You're blocking my way. Call us an ambulance. My mom, or should I say Wendy, had a broken arm, it seemed. Felix, he had a broken leg. Those cracking sounds didn't disappoint me. Both were a wreck. Weren't you just saying you didn't need me? I sat on the steps, looking down at their weak cries. Fine, I'll report this, but only if you bark like dogs. Remember what you said? Begging me makes you dogs, so bark now. It makes sense, right? No barking. Fine, I pretended to get up, I'm leaving. Wait for your precious son to save you. Woof woof. Wendy sealed her eyes and barked twice, swallowing her pride. Oh no, that doesn't sound right to me, sorry. You figure it out, I've got to get to work. Heard later that elevator technicians found them while taking the stairs. By the time they reached the hospital, they'd already fainted from the pain. Their precious Mike, growing older, caused even bigger troubles. Their savings were practically gone because of his antics. Felix wanted to return to his old job. But back when he tried to harm me, I filmed it and uploaded it online. No one dared hire him. And Mike's incident with the watermelon knife? That video's online too. I made sure everyone knew he's dangerous. No school dared to take him in either. Felix, with no other choice, ended up laboring at construction sites, a stark contrast from his former desk job. Wendy stayed home, trying to homeschool Mike. But he showed no respect, leaving the place a mess, hitting them whenever he pleased. Last month, he pulled off a stunt. While Felix and Wendy napped, he snuck out, lighter in hand, and set the living room curtains on fire before running off to play. When the flames gutted half the living room, they were awakened by the smoke and barely made it out alive. Surveillance revealed Mike as the culprit, but there was nothing they could do but swallow their grievances. They even tried contacting me, weaving morality into every word, expecting me to return, care for them, and take care of my brother just because I'm their daughter and his sister. I didn't respond, just hung up immediately. You wouldn't listen when I advised you. Now you can't handle it and want a scapegoat? Where's that free lunch in the world? The end.